The glass was shattered. Shards, like ice after a storm, scattered underfoot. Inside, emptiness. No gleam, no shine, no armored safe that always stood to the right, a silent sentinel of time. It was simply gone. Redford froze. The wind brushed the edges of his coat and something within him tightened. Not fear, something else. A loss, quiet and deep, like the night after a bad movie. This shop was his last project. Redford and Sons, though he had no sons. The name, a tribute to dreams that never came true. He opened it 5 years ago, not as an actor, but as a man tired of playing others, determined to piece together what was left of himself. And now, it was all gone. Redford pulled out his phone. His hands didn't tremble, but they moved slowly. 911 answered quickly. "Jewelry store on Melrose," he said evenly. "I think I've been robbed." "Are you the owner?" "Yes, Robert Redford." "Sorry, the Robert Redford?" He sighed. "Just send someone, all right?" The first to arrive was a police cruiser. A young officer in sunglasses stepped out slowly, eyeing the broken glass as if it were mundane, like a poorly parked Tesla. "We'll pull the camera footage," he said, not removing his shades. "Any suspicion this was an inside job? Who had keys to the safe?" Redford stared at him. The offense didn't surface immediately. First came surprise. Then a calm, precise voice. "I don't think you understand. That was a Class 4 safe. It weighed nearly 1.5 tons. You don't just carry it out in 15 minutes in the middle of the night. And keys. There were no keys. The code was in my head." The officer just shrugged. "So you're saying no one but you knew the combination?" Redford nodded, but something in the question made his heart clench. The officer's gaze was the same one used on an old man who'd lost his wallet and wasn't sure of his own words. "All right, we'll wait for the forensics team. But between us, Mr. Redford," he lowered his glasses. "These things are usually someone who knew what they were doing, and when to do it. No disgruntled ex-employees come to mind?" Redford didn't answer. But in his mind, like a flash, an image appeared. One face. Not a blurry memory, but a sharp, fresh picture. And then he realized this wasn't a regular robbery. This was personal. As the police measured the angle of entry marks and printed copies of alerts, Redford stood aside, almost a shadow himself. Locals paused, some took photos, but no one approached. He felt invisible, not a star, not a veteran. Just an old man with broken windows and a stolen past. Only one clue remained: the missing safe, along with a collection of private items never displayed in the shop. Items that held true value not for buyers, but for him. Among them, a silver pendant he wore during ordinary people, a ring he never showed the public, and one other item known to no one, not even those who thought they knew everything. Redford slowly stepped onto the street, ducked under the police tape, and stopped at the corner. The wind shifted, and in that wind there was something familiar, an echo of an old enemy, an old game. He knew the police wouldn't find anything, because this wasn't a robbery, it was a challenge. Once they applauded him standing. Now even the officers didn't recognize him. But he remembered what it was like to make a film where every frame was a clue. And this movie wasn't over yet. He looked where the safe should have been. Only a dark hole remained in the parquet, torn out like a heart from a chest. In that instant, like a flash of a frame, one detail surfaced. The GPS tracker. He'd insisted on it himself. After that Chicago heist, where robbers cleared a vault in 6 minutes, he paid a guy, a programmer who worked on studio security systems, to install a tiny tracker in the safe's wall. No one knew. Not even the store manager. And now that memory was like a key to a film others hadn't even started watching. Redford stepped back, pulled out his phone, and opened an app he hadn't used in years. The white screen loaded slowly. Too slowly. Until a red dot appeared. Alive. Pulsing. The safe was moving. And it was moving, not out of Los Angeles. Eastward, toward Nevada. Redford's heart skipped a beat. He could call the police, but an inner voice, the same one that once told him how to play a scene without words, whispered, "No, if this was who he thought it was, the police wouldn't be enough." He glanced at the officer dictating something into his radio, who didn't even look his way. Old star, old shop, old story. They wanted big cases, something for TikTok. Redford swallowed the air, slowly, and for the first time in a long while, not as an actor, not as a director, not as a brand, he became who he once was. A man who didn't wait for others' decisions. At home, in his office, the air smelled of sandalwood and memories. Posters hung on the wall. All the President's Men, 3 Days of the Condor, The Way We Were. But he didn't look at them. He spread a map of the West Coast on the table and placed an iPad beside it, the tracker's dot still moving. The dot had stopped somewhere between Baker and Prim, a nowhere town known more for its ghost of a gas station than anything else, a seemingly empty place, but exactly the kind chosen for offloading stolen goods. He leaned down, pulled a leather pouch from the bottom drawer, its clasp unopened since the 90s. Inside was an old revolver, a relic from days when studios hired guards, not lawyers. He didn't plan to shoot. But there had to be a plan, because instinct, the one that never failed him, whispered, this wasn't a random heist. Someone wanted that safe, and someone knew what was inside. The phone rang. The number was blocked. Redford answered without saying, "Hello. You still love playing old movies, Bob?" The voice was distorted, synthetic, like a cheap podcast. Redford stayed silent. Then here's the scene. Your sandbox, your safe, your memories. But this time, no script. See you in the desert. The call cut off. The gas tank was nearly empty. The Nevada sun hung over the horizon like a hot coin tossed into the sky. The world around it faded from the heat. Redford pulled up to a rundown motel with a peeling sign. Silver Dust Inn. This was where the GPS signal stopped, the dot leading to his missing safe. He killed the engine. A heavy silence settled in the car, broken only by the click of cooling metal under the hood. The wind pushed tumbleweeds across the parking lot. A burly man with a plastic coffee cup and an unsteady gait stepped out of a nearby room. Not him? Redford got out, holding the phone with the blinking dot. The GPS signal was just 10 steps away. His pulse thrummed in his temples. His hand in his pocket. Not on a gun, of course, but on a small knife he'd carried since his army days. He stepped onto the cracked sidewalk in front of room 6. An old AC unit hummed in the window. And at that moment, from around the corner, he appeared. Redford froze. Tall, slightly stooped, hair cropped short, beard unshaven. But it was a face he knew. A name surged from the depths of memory like a shadow from a distant past. Andrew? The former jewelry store employee. Once loyal, punctual, quiet. Vanished suddenly 6 years ago, never showing up for his shift after a fire inspection. The police found nothing. Rumors said he'd gone to Canada, others claimed he was dead. But here he was, alive. His eyes darted toward Redford, and in them flashed guilt, fear, something darker. He froze for a moment, then turned sharply, as if to vanish into the darkness of the back courtyard. Redford didn't hesitate. He ran after him. The sun was setting. Dust rose underfoot. The air carried a heavy, bitter suspicion. If Andrew was here, the robbery was no accident. And in Redford's mind, over and over, played a fragment of a conversation from long ago, spoken in the workshop over coffee. "You think the world's fair, Mr. Redford, but you've never really lived. Some of us are always on the other side of the glass." Redford stopped at the back door. It was ajar. He took a deep breath, catching a familiar scent. Metal, sweat, old gunpowder. Whatever he'd find behind that door would change everything. Redford stood still, listening as a floorboard creaked somewhere beyond the door. His palm was sweaty, the phone in his pocket. He pulled it out, quickly opened the Washoe County Police app, and tapped emergency call. He put it on speaker. 911, what's the emergency? This is Robert Redford. I'm at the Silver Dust Inn, room 6. I may have found someone involved in the armed robbery of my jewelry store in Los Angeles. The safe's GPS signal led me here. Stay where you are, Mr. Redford. A unit is on the way. ETA 10 minutes. I don't have 10. He's already running. He could get away any second. Mr. Redford, we ask. He ended the call. Smoothly, silently, Redford pushed the door open. Darkness. Silence. Inside, a dim lamp, a creaking ceiling fan, and the smell of cheap deodorant, as if trying to mask something rotten. The safe stood in the corner. Open. Empty. Redford stepped inside, and in that instant, click. The door behind him slammed shut. He spun around, but the lock had already engaged. Instead of Andrew, a man in a black t-shirt entered through another door, a thin smile on his face and a camera in his hands. "Well, hello, Mr. Redford," he said, calmly setting the camera on a tripod. "You have no idea what you've stepped into." "This is a setup," Redford exhaled, instinctively scanning for an exit. But the camera was already rolling, and outside the window, a headlight flashed, for a moment, like a ghost. The man leaned down and opened a metal case. Inside, tied documents, jewelry tags, photos from hidden store cameras Redford had never installed. And among them, a picture of Redford himself, holding the safe's keys, time-stamped and dated. "What is all this?" Redford asked coldly. "This," the man replied, "is the truth, Mr. Redford. Your truth, the one the world should have seen 10 years ago." Something heavy twisted in his gut. Sirens wailed in the distance. The police were coming. But when those doors were kicked in, the world wouldn't just learn about a robbery. It would learn something more. Redford already knew it. In a hotel room on the other side of the state, an unknown man sat in the dark. His face was unremarkable, just stubble on his chin and a touch of gray at his temples. He held an old silver ring, initials RR. A faint scratch across its center. Click. The TV screen lit up with cold light. Breaking news. Legendary actor and businessman Robert Redford has been detained by Nevada police on suspicion of involvement in a years-long money laundering scheme through his jewelry chain. The man leaned back in his chair. The TV spoke on. Seized documents and internal records suggest the Los Angeles store may have been a front. The safe stolen last week contained not only jewelry but also digital drives with transactions worth millions. On screen, an archival photo. A young Redford, smiling, next to the California governor at the store's 2006 opening. The camera zoomed in slowly. In every pixel, trust. Redford's representatives deny the allegations. Redford himself called it a montage and a trap, orchestrated by a former employee fired for theft in 2018. "Yeah," the man muttered. His eyes remained calm. No surprise. Only a shadow of regret. He stood, walked to the window, and glanced at the empty highway. Silence. Evening. America listened to the truth in silence. This case has reignited debates about celebrity privilege, business transparency, and how long the system allows silence. The man pulled an old, slim phone from his pocket. One message blinked on the screen. "He won't survive this. It's moving. Prep for Plan B." He turned off the TV, and before vanishing into the night, he said softly, as if to himself, "Robert, you knew it would come out eventually." The door closed. Redford sat in the interrogation room. The wall, gray, the table, cold. No cameras, no light, except the lamp overhead. He ran a finger along the deep crease between his brows. "I didn't steal, I built. Every stone in that store, my hands. I didn't—" His voice broke. Silence. Somewhere behind the door, a dull thud of boots. They see an old man, a legend from the screen, but not a person, not a heart. "I'd never—" He closed his eyes and whispered, "That wasn't the truth, not the one I know." The lamp flickered. The darkness deepened.